new levels of insanity. Activist left-wing lawfare, judges using the stroke of a pen to issue nationwide injunctions to halt President Trump's agenda, not on the merits, but on the basis of politics. We've seen nationwide injunctions block U.S. aid, waste from being slashed, blocking firings at key government agencies, even trying to block deportation flights of gang members, and the list goes on and on. Clearly, this isn't being done on the basis of the law. It's based on politics. And now we are getting more and more evidence of just how true that is. And today, we're going to lay it all out. Beyond all of this noise from the media, the Democrats and all their left-wing allies, how do we fix this lawfare and restore integrity to the process? What is the path forward? And how do we ensure that the president's agenda isn't stalled by activist judges who are putting politics above the law? So we'll have all the answers and full coverage with attorney Dan Huff. But first, free speech is under attack, but Rumble refuses to back down. We have always believed in empowering independent voices, and now Rumble is taking it to the next level. We're excited to offer Rumble Premium, a completely ad-free experience with exclusive benefits for viewers and creators. And it is more than a subscription. It is a stand for free speech. Your voice matters. Join Rumble Premium today. For a limited time, you can get $10 off an annual plan using promo code KG10. So just visit rumble.com/premium/KG10 and claim your discount today. Again, that is rumble.com/premium/KG10. And joining me now to answer that and much more, senior legal fellow at American Path Initiative, former White House senior advisor, former counsel to the House and Senate Judiciary Committees, attorney Dan Huff, a man of many accomplishments. Thank you so much for taking the time to be on the program.
Thank you for having me. What an honor.
All right. Well, let's start with the basics. What is a nationwide injunction and how does that process work? Because one judge can stop the president's actions even if there's no ruling on the merits. Is this just another form of what we've seen in the past, lawfare?
So there's been an explosion of these national injunctions. So you're quite right to bring that up as an important problem. The traditional view was that courts have jurisdiction authority over the parties before them. They don't have any authority to bind individuals not before the court. And so what's been happening recently is that plaintiffs, activists will go before a court. They'll make a claim that a certain policy is unfair, illegal, and that it should be stopped. And the judges, rather than just saying, okay, we're going to issue an order with respect to you in this particular case, will make it nationwide. They'll say anybody similarly situated, anywhere the government might want to apply this policy, it's all stopped and it's all completely halted. And that is very problematic for a number of reasons, some policy-based, some technical-based. I mean, for one thing, as you say, one judge, one unelected judge should not have the right to set policy nationally. And also, there are procedures for what they call certifying a class. You may have heard about class action litigation. Yes. That's where the judge takes real time to examine who's actually at risk here. Are they actually interested in this litigation? Do they agree that there's a problem here? And in those particular cases, you can grant relief on a broader basis. But ordinarily, you're not supposed to do that. There's been an explosion of these types of things, and they've been disproportionately targeted at President Trump. In fact, I believe that over half of the national injunctions, all of them ever issued since 1960 have been against Trump administration policies. And that analysis was done by Harvard. Wow. And that was done, I think, in 2021. So before the latest slew of injunctions that began, with President Trump's second inauguration.
Wow. Well, you have a recent column out that argues that injunction bonds can restore integrity to this process. And it may sound maybe a little academic, but it's actually a big deal. What could it mean, and why does it matter?
So I think that I need to give a little bit of background for the listeners here. Please. What we have, as you mentioned, is a series of cases where district court judges have told the Trump administration, stop. And these are called temporary injunctions or temporary restraining orders. And the important thing to remember here is that these are pre-trial orders, meaning that there's not been time to do extensive fact-finding. The administration's not had an opportunity to develop its legal arguments. And in some cases, it's not even had an opportunity to go before the judge at all. They just issue and say stop because a plaintiff asked for it. So the question is, these things are all being done hurriedly, quickly, without real analysis. What if there's a mistake? And certainly a lot of us looking at these decisions feel that they're clearly mistaken. So what if the government's told, hey, government, you can't fire those people. You can't deport those people. And you have to rehire them. You got to bring them back. There's real costs to the government doing that, costs that are borne by the taxpayer. And if it turns out later that the government had every right to fire them or every right to deport these alien criminal terrorists and gang members, well, how do the taxpayers get their money back when it turns out later that they had every right to do that? Well, it turns out there's a fix for that. So federal court judges are governed by a set of rules called the Federal Rules of Civil Procedure. And one of these rules, Rule 65C, provides for just this circumstance, where a judge has issued a preliminary order, and after a full hearing or after an appeal, that order is reversed. And what the rule says is that a judge may issue a preliminary stop order, an injunction or a restraining order, only if there is a bond to compensate a wrongfully enjoined party for its costs and damages, meaning that the person seeking the injunction, the criminal terrorists, or the government workers who've been fired, the plaintiffs, the people who want to tell the government stop, they have to put up money at the outset to compensate the government and the taxpayers if it turns out later that an appeals court or the Supreme Court say, hey, the government was right, the government could do this.
Okay, so that makes a lot of sense. And let's talk about bonds. Aren't bonds, discretionary? The rule says a judge may issue an injunction. Doesn't that make it by its very virtue, discretionary? What do you think?
So it's a very important question, because if these bonds are enforced, if this rule that says bonds must be posted is enforced, it will stop this activist litigation in its tracks. It'll basically solve all of our problems. Why? Because the cost of these bonds can be prohibitive. If you're going in, we have a case, what was it, in California, basically, a case was brought. 25,000 federal workers who'd been fired by DOJ were required to be rehired. Now think of the cost of that. If the average cost of an employee maybe is $100,000 with a loaded wage for benefits is $125,000. Sure. You're talking about forcing the government to spend maybe $40, $50 million a month, okay, to rehire these people that they may have every right to fire. So how do they get their money back when the Supreme Court says, yeah, DOJ could do that, the government could do that? Right. And so if they were required at the outset to put up this bond money, they wouldn't be able to even bring the case. They wouldn't be able to even go into court with this frivolous position, because the money they'd have to put up would be prohibitive. And what happens once the court reverses the injunction and says the government was right? You lose that money. When you post a bond, if it turns out that your argument was bad, you lose that money. Sure. So in all these cases, it's millions of dollars that are going to go completely flush down the toilet, and it's going to deter these activists from coming up initially and bringing these cases to start with. So to directly answer your question, are the bonds discretionary? The answer is no. The leftist judges are acting like they are, like they're discretionary. We don't have to do this, but that's not what the rule says. If you actually read the rule, 65C, it says specifically that an injunction may issue only if the plaintiff posts a bond. It's just that the judges are ignoring it, and the conservatives until now have not been insisting on it.
Oh, well, they should, because it should make it like de facto, improper or and get it struck down. But okay, so let's talk about the case law. I'm a little legal myself. Right. What the case law looks like. What about a public interest exception to the bond requirement? And what about critics who say this could have a chilling effect on public interest litigation?
So I think the most important thing to remember here is that the injunction bond, although it would be effective to stop frivolous litigation, if you have a meritorious case, you can still bring it. All that will happen is you don't get a preliminary injunction. You don't get to tell the government stop before there's been a full hearing, a full exploration of the legal and factual questions. So it's only when you want to stop something in a pretrial way that you have to post the bond. If you have a legitimate argument and you can't afford the bond, you can still sue the government. You can still validate your exercise your rights. You can still vindicate your rights by going to court. What you can't do is score a quick victory against the government before having to really prove your case in court. So I think that's point number one, as far as it doesn't shut the doors of the courthouse to people with meritorious claims. But you brought up a second important point, which is when these judges, these activist judges say stop to the government and they say no bonds, they claim falsely that there's an exception to the bond rule that makes it basically when you're bringing public interest litigation, you don't have to put in such a bond. Now, they like to say that, but that's completely false. There's no basis for it. The rule on a textual matter, there is no exception for such a thing. The activist judges have tried to concoct an exception, but we can't let them get away with it. And in fact, if you look at the history, it's very clear what happened here. For 40 years, the bond requirement was enforced as absolutely mandatory. There's no exceptions. Then in the 60s, these liberals started suing for various types of things. They wanted welfare recipients to get rid of limits on their benefits. Environmentalists wanted to block projects, for example, the San Francisco airport and expansion there. So judges started to say, hey, we're sympathetic to the plaintiffs here. We're going to claim that the injunctions can be issued without a bond if it implicates important social considerations. So you have some judges out there saying that, but it isn't so. There's no textual basis for it, and there's no warrant for it in the legislative history. And fortunately, there are a bunch of judges who are intellectually honest and who have recognized that, in fact, there is no such justification. And one example, shockingly, is Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who before she became a Supreme Court justice, served as a judge on the U.S. Court of Appeals for the D.C. Circuit. And in a case there, she was on a panel with two other judges, but the decision rejected a district court's attempt to find a public interest exception. And what Judge Ginsburg and her colleagues said there was that the district court suggested that the public interest favors encouraging plaintiffs to challenge agencies' interpretations of law, et cetera. She said this completely overlooks a key purpose of the bond, and that is to make plaintiffs consider the damage they may inflict by pressing ahead with a possibly losing claim. So in other words, what she's saying is, the whole point of this bond requirement is to prevent people from making frivolous cases. There's no exceptions. There's no public interest exceptions. Think before you act.
Are there concerns that this could get turned around on Republicans? Is that a danger here?
So it's always smart to think about, what could happen if you apply this rule? Could it be turned around upon you? Is it really fair? And the answer is that this is not something we need to worry about because conservatives suffer disproportionately from these national injunctions. As I mentioned at the outset, the statistics are staggering. And between 2001 and 2025, 2/3 of all national injunctions targeted Trump policies. So deterring these national injunctions is overwhelmingly beneficial for conservatives.
Yeah, well, that's for sure. So I think I like because you're paying attention to the details, and it's the details really matter here in terms of whether these are legal and can be effective, and I like the smart approach to combating it. And now they're finally paying attention. So the question then is, what should the DOJ do? What should be the actual, official guidance on this?
So I think what DOJ has to do is it's got to go to these judges and it's got to say that we, the Justice Department, the administration, we're going to obey the law, but you must too. And what they need to say is we are going to obey any lawful injunction. But an injunction without a bond is void ab initio. It's void from the start, that the court has no power to issue it. And they can cite a case called Hopkins against Wallins that says that a bond is a condition precedent to the issuance of a preliminary injunction. What do I mean by a condition precedent? Yeah. It has to happen before you're allowed to issue the bond. So if you if you issue an injunction and there's no bond, there's no injunction. It's as if it were never issued.
Okay, so I like that.
This is need to go and say that. Yeah. Right.
No, that's very, I feel like I'm back in law school, but it's not really bothering me. I kind of like it. Like condition precedent. What does that mean? It's like, I'm just going to sit here all day with you and you're going to put out little legal terms and it's going to make me smile. It's fun. All right. Has this been litigated at the U.S. Supreme Court level? And, what does the high court have to say about this?
So as far as I know, there haven't been any clear cases, certainly recently in the Supreme Court on the question of the bond requirement. Mm-hmm. We have seen a lot of cases where, at least in dissents, there have been justices saying these national injunctions are wrong, they are bad, they're inconsistent with the law, they're bad policy, and we need to sort of the majority of the court needs to make a statement reining that in. So there's definitely concern about these national injunctions, different questions of how it should be stopped. I'm not aware of a specific case on the bond requirement recently in the context that we're discussing.
Yeah. And so are there concerns, in any way, shape, or, form that, in fact, there could be an issue here, because of, like, for example, the Chief Justice last week appeared to take a shot at the president. What was your reaction to that?
It's certainly unusual. And as other people have pointed out, you didn't see him making any statements when President Biden was attacking the court, when Senator Schumer was attacking the court and threatening it, essentially. So that was disappointing. But I will say this, what I think is nice about this injunction bond strategy that we're talking about is that it's actually a very convenient off-ramp. It's not talking about impeachment. It's not talking about changing those laws. It's not talking about ignoring an order. We're not saying ignore the order. We're saying we're going to enforce the order,
right,
as soon as the plaintiffs post bond. And
so it's not playing games. It's just the law. It's the rules.
Yeah, exactly. We're not changing anything. We're just asking that the rules be followed by everybody.
Right. And it's a process, objection to it, to say, hey, you've got to follow the process. This is what you have to do. And if they don't do that, then it's by very, nature, invalid.
Yeah, and it's very easy to explain to people. Like, you can literally just look up Federal Rule Section 65C. It's like 2 sentences, and it says the injunction issues only if there's a bond.
Yeah, it's very simple. Like, anybody can read that. Okay, that's like Cliff Notes for dummies. Civil rules for dummies.
When you're cramming for your final in law school at the last minute, you see that.
Exactly, and you're like, okay, I got it. There you go. That's like the bright line. That's what the first sentence of your essay response. So if this is in the federal rules of civil procedure, why is what I'm wondering, has it gone on, this way for so long? Like, what happened here?
So I think what's happened basically is that liberals early on realized strategically that they need to sideline this requirement. And so they started getting some activist judges, sympathetic judges, to say, hey, it's not mandatory. Hey, there's an exception. And conservatives, because they've been worried about so many different things, just hadn't had time to focus on it and dig in and do sort of the primary research to see what's actually here.
Mm-hmm. That's what I think is seems to be the case. So what do you think next steps? Where should we go from here? What are you looking forward to seeing occur?
Well, I think I'm really glad you're discussing this on your show, and thrilled to be here. And I think we have to do an education campaign to let the public know what the rule really is and how badly we've been essentially hoodwinked by the left. In fact, there's a law review article, I think it was from 1985, where the writer says, hey, we want to do all this activist litigation. We want to go and sue here and sue there to change policy, but we're going to be blocked by these injunction bonds.
Sure.
So we have to find a way around it. So for a long time, they've been maneuvering around this. We're just catching up now. And I think that the education campaign here is very important to let people know that this is an issue, and to give, frankly, the administration air cover so that when it goes to the judges and say, you better follow the law too, they know why it's being said and that it's fair, and that the government is within its rights to demand that Rule 65C be honored and enforced by the judges before the government is required to comply with any injunction.
I love it. I love it. I love it. This is why he's a man of so many titles. Okay. So many important positions. Did you figure it out yet already? So where can we go to learn more? What's the best place to direct, and also for people to be able to follow you and see the work you do?
Thanks for asking. So you can follow me at Real Dan Huff on X. And as far as information on bonds, we've set up a website called demandbonds.com that's got answers to frequently asked questions and some information. And, we don't make any money off of it. It's purely educational, in keeping with your point about what can we do next. We got to get the word out, make people understand what's really going on here so that we can fight back.
I love it. I love it. I love it. It's fabulous. We're really looking forward, our whole team, to having you on today. We look forward to having you back again. If you will have us, we will have you. The one and only Legal Eagle, Dan Huff, thank you so much.
I would love that. Thank you for having me.
All right. Have a good day. And in the meantime, be sure to check out the 1775 Coffee Company. We talk about it all the time. Don't compromise on taste, quality, or your values. And 1775 coffee is brewed to perfection, crafted with precision, and built on patriotism. The farm to cup process means there is quality, authenticity, and sustainability from start to finish. All the beans are ethically and exclusively single sourced. So please try 1775 coffee today. Go to 1775coffee.com/KG and you can get 15% off of your first order. And joining me now, your favorite lawyer, I want to say mine too, hello, Article 3 Project founder, Mike Davis. Mike, and apologize for that brief delay earlier, but we're back on track. Thank you for joining us today. Always a pleasure. And I just kind of want to get your play-by-play on what happened with these flights and this judge's action. I've been waiting till today to hear it from you.
It's unbelievable that this D.C. Obama judge, Jeb Boasberg, moonlighted this weekend as the commander-in-chief. He went into his chambers on Saturday during the middle of a national security operation where the president of the United States is coordinating with a foreign leader, the president of El Salvador, to deport the most vicious terrorist in the Western Hemisphere, Tren de Aragua, along with MS-13. And this Obama judge in D.C. not only held this hearing during the middle of this operation. Now, he says it was closed door hearing, but it's not in a skiff. So, of course, these details could leak out, and they did leak out during the middle of the operation, which puts American lives in danger, grave danger, along with the lives of our allies. This judge, Bozo, actually thought he had the power to order the president of the United States to turn around these planes and bring back these vicious terrorists. We saw the video that the Salvadorian president posted.
Yeah, Nayib Bukele, great guy.
With the operation, the security operation, with the handoff of these terrorists from America. They land in El Salvador. They're handed off. It's on your screen right now. This
unbelievable.
Is an intense security operation, and this goofball judge in D.C. thinks that you can just turn around these flights and bring them back to America without having these security precautions in place. Did he know how much fuel were on these planes? He did not have the power to do this. This was the most egregious sabotage of the president's commander-in-chief powers by this judge, and this is why I am calling for his impeachment.
Good. I agree. You can't do this. This is the whole thing. The reason why President Trump, one of the many actually, reasons why that he was elected, because people want to stop this lawfare, and these judges are out of control. And you're right. He was trying to usurp the power of the president of the United States, like he's the commander in chief, and issue an illegal ruling. It is highly improper. It should be actionable, and there should be some accountability. Okay. Let's talk to the folks that are watching. You know, what did this Looney Tunes base this ruling on? And what does the language of the Alien Enemies Act tell us and about the president's inherent Article 2 authority to conduct foreign affairs?
The president is the commander-in-chief and the chief executive officer under Article 2 of the Constitution. He has the power under the Constitution alone to repel invasion of our country. And that's exactly what these illegal immigrants coming into our country from Venezuela, this Tren de Aragua, these are vicious terrorists who are coming to our country. The president has designated them as foreign terrorists. He has every right under Article 2 of the Constitution as the chief executive officer, as commander-in-chief, to get them the hell out of our country. Not only does he have the right to do that, he has a duty to do that. And these judges, these activist judges, didn't raise any concern when President Biden illegally mass imported these vicious terrorists over the last 4 years. But then when President Trump gets them the hell out of our country, they think they can stop them. This judge in D.C. can go to hell. In the meantime, the House needs to impeach him. They need to defund him. They need to make him an example out of this guy so these activist judges know there are going to be severe consequences when they do this crap.
No, you're absolutely right. And we cannot have this. There needs to be a precedent established that this is improper, that it will not be tolerated, and there can be no subsequent acts in any way, shape, or form like what this judge did. It's out of control. Like you literally are violating the oath of office. He should no longer be able to wear a robe, okay? And the president's order was very explicit. It directly links, Tren de Aragua and Cartel de los Soles to Maduro. What does that mean for further action and further efforts to stop the violence and drug trafficking?
Well, the direct tie between these international terrorists and the Venezuelan government shows that they are transnational actors. They're working for the Venezuelan government. And so that means the president can use the statutes from 1798 or whatever the statute was, and he can use that statute to get these foreign terrorists the hell out of our country. There is minimal due process that they can get under the statute. President Trump satisfied that. He has a duty separate from that statute. He has a duty as commander-in-chief to repel this invasion. And these people are kidnapping, robbing, raping, torturing, and murdering Americans. Apparently that was acceptable for Joe Biden, but there is a new sheriff in town, and Donald J. Trump is not going to put up with this.
Yeah, and the president is also tasking the DOJ to come up with a plan on how to carry out these tasks, okay? What should that look like, and what role will the FBI have in all of this?
Well, Kash Patel is the FBI director. He's phenomenal. Pam Bondi is the attorney general. She's phenomenal. They are bold, they are fearless, and they are going to carry out the president's orders as they must. The Justice Department is not independent of the president. These Democrats oftentimes say that what they mean is that the Justice Department is independent from Republican presidents while they do the Democrat president's bidding. The attorney general, this is how it works. Every federal prosecutor and agent in America works for the deputy attorney general, who works for the attorney general, who works for the president, who's elected by all Americans. And the president has made a policy determination that he doesn't want these illegal immigrants in our country, particularly these terrorist gangs, these international terrorists, foreign terrorists, and he's going to get them the hell out of our country. And we have an attorney general and an FBI director and a secretary of Homeland Security and Tom Homan. They are doing their jobs very, very well. Stephen Miller, they are getting these people the hell out of our country as the president has commanded.
I love it. Yep. Meanwhile, President Trump, and this is very interesting to me, and I know to you, we're like two peas in a pod. President Trump says that the Biden auto pen pardons are void. I mean, this is so amazing. What are the relevant statutes and case law, on a situation like this, which is kind of novel? And has something like this ever been litigated? I mean, what's next?
So I think that what President Trump said in his truth post, and he's correct, it's not just the fact that these were auto pens, because a lot of politicians use an auto pen, including past presidents have used an auto pen. The issue is the person who's operating that auto pen, are they carrying out the president's will? Does the president know that they're signing pardons on his behalf? Does the president approve that? Does the president oppose that? And that's the problem with Joe Biden, is he was so demented, so out of it, that we don't know if these pardons were legitimate. Were they legitimately carrying out President Biden's will to pardon these people, or were staffers running in and citing pardons against his will or without his knowledge? Did Hunter Biden run into the auto pen room at the White House and sign his pardon? We just don't know. And the president's absolutely correct. If they sign these pardons on President Biden's behalf without his knowledge, without his consent, or against his will, they're not valid. This is forgery. This is obstruction of justice. This is conspiracy. There are many federal crimes, and if you're not signing these pardons with the president's knowledge and consent, they're void.
Well, and I think this is a pretty serious issue, in that it's one that I don't know, that really needs to be drilled down on, that they need to figure this out. There's a serious argument to make those null and void. And what could this mean if that would occur, for Hunter, for Schiff, what a list, Fauci, others.
How you would test this is you would bring indictments against people who were pardoned, who are criminals. And then when they go to present their pardon, to say that they are not subject to the criminal prosecution because they have this presidential pardon, then the judge would decide at that time whether the pardon was valid or not. So let's test this.
Yeah, I think so. Very interesting. Okay, so if Biden's legal signature was used, as you've been mentioning, that perhaps is the case, without his consent or knowledge, couldn't this have, far-reaching effects beyond just the pardons? Because how do we know there's other things that weren't similarly situated?
Yeah, that's exactly right. This is why you can't elect a demented president.
Every time you say demented, I'm just like, oh my God. Because it's really true, by the way.
Yeah, I don't know what else you would call it. The guy doesn't know what he, had for breakfast, and he's the president of the United States, and people are signing pardons behind his back, and apparently he didn't know about some of these pardons when he was asked about it by reporters. So Alina Hava had a really good post on this. She posted that a picture of Jill Biden and said Jill Biden was #AutoPen. So who knows who's running this country, but it certainly wasn't Joe Biden.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right about that. It's interesting. I can't get the visual out of my head of Hunter running into the AutoPen room and then, just signing away. And what about this talk, that we highlighted in the beginning of our conversation of impeaching judges? What is the process, or what does that actually look like? And what about the injunction bonds on some of these cases?
Yeah, so let's start in reverse order. If you seek an injunction against the government, you have to post an injunction bond. So, for example, one of the injunctions that was sought and ordered was when these activists ran to this radical judge in D.C. Biden judge Ali, who barely got through. He brags he's the first Muslim and Arab on the D.C. federal court. He is a Canadian citizen. I don't know how the hell you can still be a Canadian citizen with dual loyalty and be a federal judge for the rest of your life. But this judge ordered the president to send $2 billion in foreign aid against the president's will. The president wanted to pause this to make sure, for example, that we're not funding Hamas terrorists under the guise of Gaza humanitarian relief, or we're not, funding waste, fraud, and abuse like transgender frogs or whatever the hell it is in Pakistan or wherever this money's going. And the president has every right. He actually has the duty under Article 2 to make sure we're not funding terrorism or waste, fraud, and abuse. And this judge came in and said, you can't do that. He issued this illegal temporary restraining order, which is supposed to pause the case. I don't know how sending $2 billion is pausing the case. But when you do that, you have to put up an injunction bond. So if it comes out later that this $2 billion should not have been spent, the government can recover this $2 billion with an injunction bond. So the judge didn't order this injunction bond. And then all this did in the Supreme Court, of course, with the Chief Justice and Justice Amy Coney Barrett, did not stop this on some stupid civil procedure grounds that was legally flawed. And so here we are 2 weeks later, and now this DC Obama Judge Boasberg is ordering the president to turn around flights during the middle of a national security operation. Thank God they didn't turn around the flights, but it just shows you that these radical activist judges are emboldened. They're sabotaging the presidency, and these judicial saboteurs need to be impeached and removed from office and defunded.
And what about Congress's oversight responsibilities over Article 3 judges? What is the roadmap here?
Well, I used to have that role in the Senate. I was the chief counsel for nominations on the Senate Judiciary Committee with the oversight portfolio over the federal judiciary. And Chairman Chuck Grassley just put out a letter today. I posted it on my social. I used to work for him. He's a great guy. He's going to start doing oversight on this, on the injunction bond issue, on these activist judges. He's tired of it, and he's gonna put an end to this. And so I'm working very closely with Chairman Grassley and his staff, along with Leader Thune and his staff, and several other people, to come up with legislation to make this painful for these activists so they stop doing this. And so if they want to play these political games, they're going to get political prizes.
Oh my God, I'm telling you, it's it's really unbelievable. What do you expect to be like the next steps here in terms of perhaps like an impeachment of that judge?
Well, they are working on impeachment articles right now in the House of Representatives. I'm going to make damn sure that there is political pressure on this judge. My goal is to get him impeached. He probably won't get removed because there are too many Democrats in the Senate, but I want to make the process the punishment. I want to make this judge go through this process. I want to make it painful. If he's sitting through impeachment proceedings, he can't order the president to turn around flights. And I want to make an example out of him. So if other activists, here's what happens. These DC judges, Democrat judges, and I know this for a fact, they are giddy. They are trying to figure out who gets to issue the next TRO against President Trump, and they're judicial saboteurs. I want to make this painful for them and other judges around the country so they think twice about doing this. I'm going to make them infamous. I'm going to make their jobs hell going through an impeachment proceeding. And even if they don't get removed from office, it's not going to be pleasant for them. Well,
and it shouldn't be. Actions have consequences. And if they're going to engage in this fashion, I mean, it's the audacity. It's egregious to say that you can actually try to overrule the president of the United States. And who was it? Bukele, or was like too late?
Yeah. Well, I would say this. This is what I would say to the Chief Justice, John Roberts. It is actually shameful that you have allowed this to happen. You've allowed these activist judges to do this around the country. You're the Chief Justice of the United States, and you are the Circuit Justice for the District of Columbia. And you have allowed these radical activists to sabotage the presidency. And because you're not doing your job in stopping this, Congress has to step up with impeachment in the House and aggressive oversight by Senate Judiciary Chairman Chuck Grassley in the Senate, because you failed to do your job.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. But I love that everything's already in motion. And, I want you to come back, of course, often on the show, but to discuss this as this proceeds forward. I think it's very interesting, and I think it's very important to establish this precedent, because we don't need this over the next 4 years, these activist judges going rogue and violating the Constitution. It's insane, and it's not going to happen under your watch and President Trump's.
We didn't have the Article 3 project at the beginning of the Trump administration. I was in the Senate confirming as judges. We have it now. There's no way in hell we're going to let activist judges sabotage President Trump's presidency again.
All right. That's music to my ears. Mike Davis, always a pleasure. And everybody go follow Mike's work. Go to article3project.org. Get involved, get informed, and be supportive. Thank you so much, my friend.
Thank you.
Once again, President Trump and his administration can right another of the left's wrongs and stop this lawfare in its tracks. We have laid out the roadmap, taken on the issues, and are ready to restore the rule of law. As I've said, it is a new day in America, and we are just getting started. Thank you so much for joining us today. Please be sure to download the Rumble app, subscribe to my channel, turn on notifications, like and share, and tell all your friends so they know exactly where to find us. And please also be sure to follow me across all platforms: X, Truth Social, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. Stay tuned to Rumble for all the very latest breaking news coverage. I hope you have a great rest of the day, and I'm looking